Hi, I'm Hanaku, and I'm obsessed with ibisPaint X even though I have no idea how to use it. This video is kindly brought to you by Squarespace. After my last adventure of drawing in ibisPaint and actually giving it 5 whole brownie points, a good number of you adorable scoundrels informed me that I was, in fact, doing everything completely wrong. So today I will go through all of your handy-dandy YouTube comments to find your best advice and apply your tips in a new drawing in ibisPaint X. Now, I'm really counting on you guys to make my art infinitely better after these tips, okay? Let's scurry on to it then. Yes, my favorite feature, the daily rankings, which may or may not be real, who knows. I skedaddle on to making a new canvas, and here I enter my normal canvas size of 2000 pixels by 2500 pixels. I always draw on a canvas ratio of 4:5 because it fits most formats online. I hit OK, and oh god, the white canvas is just way too blinding. Good thing I have our first tip here, which says for me to open the layer tab, and at the bottom, click the white square to change the background color to a color that doesn't strain my eyes. I chose this purplish gray, and now I can save myself from the crippling fear of a white canvas to a much less daunting and notably calmer color. For my eyes, I'll give 1 brownie point for this tip. I was prepared to sketch and opened up the brush menu when I was greeted with this. Oh, how could I forget the glorious ads? So I clicked OK, and ibis actually surprised me with a certain cute teal-haired girl. Clearly, this was a sign to draw Miku, so for my sketch, I decided to use the Fade watercolor brush with a few adjustments. After my last debacle of being unable to flip the canvas, many of you advised me that actually there was an easier way to flip the canvas. For tip 2, open up the layer menu, and under the canvas preview, there's a flip button. I thank you guys for saving my life, though I still think ibis should just add a flip button on the main interface. It'd be way more convenient, so until then, I will be withholding my brownies. With this, I was able to complete my sketch of Miku happily, and took upon the next challenge of lining my piece. For my line art, I decided this pencil graphite brush seemed nice. One issue I came across while drawing on my iPad is that I felt the urge to zoom in all the time. This isn't especially great because it causes you to overwork a part without focusing on the bigger picture. But then, I was saved by our third tip. You can create a reference tab by going to the bottom right, settings, and turning on the reference window. You could add your own references by adding an image or use it as a navigator to see your whole picture while you're working on details. And by golly, when I tell you this was a game changer, I mean it. When I want to check if my lines look good zoomed out, all I gotta do is take a look at my reference window instead of stopping and pinching my fingers every 2 seconds. Highly recommend. This is a definite brownie point tip. Last time, I was very impressed by ibisPaint's Liquify tool and gave it a brownie point for how smooth and effective it was. This time for our 4th tip, in the Liquify pen, you can actually use the smooth pen to smooth out pixelated brushstrokes. And honestly, I gave this a try several times swiping over my lines, but I couldn't see any notable differences. Though this is probably more due to the fact of the type of brush I was using. Next time I'll use something more pixelated to test it out, but for the purpose of this drawing, it didn't really do anything for me. Still love the Liquify tool though. Okie dokie, I finished the line art, and our Miku is sporting the well-beloved wild Hanaku hair this time. Now I'm going to move on to trying out all your fun coloring tips, but before that, a quick word from today's sponsor, Squarespace. If you didn't know, Squarespace is an all-in-one website platform where you can build your own website, blog, online store, and more. A great perk of Squarespace is that its platform is very intuitive, so you don't need to code a single thing while designing your site. This makes it ideal to design an art portfolio that meets your standards without going through the pains of website coding and designing. Image focal point. Every time you set an image, you can define the focal point of your picture, ensuring that you get the perfect crop for thumbnails or resized images. Image effects. To add an extra pizzazz to your images, try adding preset visual effects like this water effect. You can even adjust settings manually like the speed, multiple contributors, and access levels. You can add contributors to your website and select their permissions and what they have access to. This way, multiple people can contribute to and manage the Squarespace sites at once. Head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/HanaQ to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. And now, back to the video. So last time I drew in ibisPaint, I was unable to comfortably base color with the paint bucket tool. So you guys came through and actually gave me 3 different ways to fill in my base colors. So let's go through them. So our 5th tip and first base coloring tip, in the settings of the bucket tool, you can actually change which layers to reference. And you can even mess with the settings here. At first, it was completely off base and just colored everything. Then with some messing around, I was able to get it to slowly fill in the face. But it came out piece by piece like it was some sort of puzzle. And it was indeed puzzling to me. Sometimes it even just colored random complete circles and I was just confused at this point. But I will say later in the process, I found a way to make this kind of work. But I gotta say, the paint bucket tool just ain't paint bucketing for me. For our second coloring tip and our 6th tip overall, many of you have suggested for me to try the lasso fill tool in the special pen. We just click the little cogwheel, choose lasso fill, and now draw in our shape. And oh my god, this was extremely satisfying. Just seeing the colors spill themselves in automatically was like glory to my eyes. You can also quickly switch between lasso erase and lasso fill to make those minute details. This process is quick and effective, exactly how your base coloring process should be. It works, it's extremely satisfying, and it deserves a brownie point. There's also stuff like this copy pen, which is cool, but I haven't figured out yet how I would use it in a real drawing. Now, for the final coloring tip and 7th tip overall, you can use the selection layer and draw over areas you want to color with your brush, which is more precise than the lasso tool. And it is definitely true that this is way more precise. Select the selection layer and fill in your areas in blue. You can control the selection area like tiny corners and easily change your brush size midway through. I was even able to use the bucket tool to fill in the area after I drew out the selection. Then I just filled in my desired color on a separate layer. I would say this is pretty useful, but I do think there are way more steps to go through as opposed to the lasso fill tool, which isn't really fun when I want to slap the color on quickly. I'd say it's definitely functional in special circumstances. Alright, let's use the techniques I just learned to apply these base colors. I gotta say, this time around adding colors was a lot easier, so those tips really help. Thanks guys! Now let's move on to some shading. For our 8th tip, y'all have mentioned to me that you can change any brush to a water type and adjust the blending. I did test this out a bit with different brushes like airbrush, opaque watercolor, etc. But honestly, I think I need to mess around with it a little bit more because it was still really hard to control the blending amount. I have a suspicion this has more to do with the pen pressure sensitivity on ibis than with these settings, so I'm not sure any amount of tinkering will get it to function smoothly. I think using brushes at a lower opacity and blending between the 2 colors would work better. I will say that for tip 9, you all suggested that I use the blur/smudge tool to try and get a gradient effect. It doesn't work really well as a gradient, but it sure did blur effectively, so I liked it. I think I'll hold off on any shading brownie points because I probably just need to practice more before I find the perfect coloring techniques on ibisPaint. Okay, so I'm really sad to say that my footage for the rest of the shading here got corrupted. It honestly pains me because I did so much that I want to show you guys with all the cool tricks I found out. Here's a short time lapse of how it all went down, but I'm also just going to go through the layers one by one to explain what I did. So first I added this multiply layer on top of everything, turned on alpha lock, and added this reddish color to the edges for a subsurface light scattering effect. Then I added a first pass of atmospheric perspective on an overlay layer, then a second pass. I also added multiply layers for the clothing and accessories. Afterwards, I added more detail shading to the skin, and then more. Here I added shading to the eyes, then the clothes came next. For the hair, I added a first layer of shading, then topped it off with some more overlay layers to create depth. Finally, I finished off the eyes and some final details. At this point, this is where I learned how to do tip 9, where you can group all the layers into a folder and merge them down, which was super solid, but I lost my mind at tip 10, where you go to this plus button and you can add a layer from canvas, which creates a new layer merging all the visible layers. This was so insanely useful when I need to add new effects on top while keeping my older versions. Honestly, 10 out of 10 function, and it deserves its own brownie point. Using that function, I created new layers with different amounts of color balance settings and made one on darken mode and another on lighten. Afterwards, I just did a lot of various effects that I wished I had recorded, but sadly the files are gone in the abyss. But on that note, here is the final tip you guys have given me, that ibisPaint has a YouTube channel with lots of tricks and features. So I scrolled through and I found this tutorial on how to make water droplets on your drawing, and I knew I had to do it. The first thing to do is to search up these blood splatters in the image materials. Now you just scatter them all over. Honestly, it looks like a bit of a murder scene, but it truly describes my mood after losing all my footage earlier. Bear with me, it won't be bloody for much longer. Now merge down all your blood splatters. Next, the tutorial mentions to go to the FX panel and to scroll and choose the water drop effect. Now at this point, just mess around with the settings. And by golly, it works. It truly works. I was honestly shook with how good they turned out. I put on a few morphing effects as well, just for good measure, but this undoubtedly deserves a brownie point. And honestly, this tutorial has got me curious to try out even more ibisPaint X tutorials in the future. Yep, I am 100% sure that we've got our next video idea. But anyhow, the drawing is finished now, so enjoy the final reveal. So this video was sort of a mess. I had a lot of fun drawing in ibisPaint, but nearly lost my marbles at the end there. This is not gonna stop me. I am so determined to become a pro at ibisPaint X now, just watch. Thanks again for all your tips. And here's some more fan art drawn by the lovely community. Love you guys always. And until next time, I'm wishing you all the best on your journeys of achieving your goals and dreams. Bye!